What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a video on Troubleshooter, Abandoned Children. This is a game that has been requested for me to cover pretty frequently, as it is a relatively popular tRPG, or you'll hear it referred to as sRPG sometimes, as it has a bit of a more anime aesthetic to it, and typically games like that are referred to as sRPG, but it means the same thing as tRPG, which is to say it is a tactical turn-based game. So I will be doing everything and checking out this game, getting 100%, all that jazz like usual. However, I do want to mention at the beginning of this video that this one is going to take me a while. For starters, this is a very long game. Conservative estimates put a playthrough at around 100 hours, which by itself would honestly take me at least a week or two. But combine that with the fact that I actually have a few projects going on for next week that I can't talk about just yet, and I'm going to have a very busy couple of weeks, which means I won't be able to dedicate my full attention to this game for at least another week, meaning that this one is going to take me longer to review than normal. But as I mentioned, this is one people have been asking me to check out a lot, and I'm excited to get around to it. As the game itself has a relatively interesting premise. You are living in a city called Valhalla. It's apparently some like central trade hub between world powers, and it has a serious problem with crime. The crime rate is through the roof. And in order to combat this, because the city's not allowed to have any form of like military presence, just police, they start licensing vigilantes, which are called troubleshooters. You play as a kid named Albus, who's becoming a troubleshooter specifically to access information about what happened to his parents. Overall, interesting enough premise, gives you a reason to fight a lot of crime in the streets, so to speak, which sets up a lot of our turn-based battles. I would tell you the story starts off very slow. I'm not super far into the game right now, but so far the game has mostly been explaining every tRPG mechanic in excruciating detail, which is probably great for new players, to be honest, but when you're experienced and there's no way to skip it, it gets a little frustrating for someone like myself. That said, the actual combat or the tactical part of Troubleshooter is really good. It is a turn-based system, uses an action point system as well, so pretty standard as far as these types of games go. Technically, it's an action point system, but it is the action point system that sees you with like 2 or 3 actions per move. I don't know if it's going to expand later, but at the start of the game, you have 2 action points, and you can move and then attack, or if you have certain abilities, you can move and attack with the same action point. Now, what's actually interesting and unique about this is that each character you get, because you do get access to set characters, they kind of have a class already. However, what you can customize about them are their masteries. These are sort of like consumable attachments or upgrades you can equip onto them, and these will give them various passive bonuses. And apparently, I haven't really gotten into this too much yet, but apparently if you attach these masteries in a certain way, it will actually unlock like synergies together and give you extra bonuses, which I thought was cool. But overall, there's like 800 something masteries, I believe the marketing for the game says, which is pretty intense. So there's a lot of customization there, while simultaneously keeping every character as their own class, which overall I like. There is also an equipment system. There are also actual abilities in combat to use, so masteries are usually more passive in nature, whereas your class will give you access to abilities that you can then swap out and use in different situations. So a lot of customization per character, and I'm excited to lean into that part of it. Now, once you actually get into the game a little ways, you sort of set up a kind of operating hub that you are performing your troubleshooting duties out of, and this is where you start recruiting other characters into your troubleshooter team and taking on various missions. Most of the missions appear to be replayable, which I imagine is going to help track down achievements quite a bit, honestly. But the missions themselves, even from the start of the game, seem pretty varied. There's a lot of kill all the guys if you want, but usually they try to provide you some alternative option as well. There are also things like mitigating damage to, civilians, keeping innocent people from dying. You can get them out of harm's way and out of the situation, as a lot of what is happening is that the missions are attacks on a public space, meaning that as a troubleshooter, you also have a responsibility to care for the civilians in there and kind of help them out. So I thought that was a cool touch as well, which varies up the gameplay. And I don't want to go on for too terribly long, as honestly, it's relatively a simple game, but I did want to mention at the end here that there's also an online option where you can connect to servers and play in co-op, or apparently there's even a PvP option, which I thought was a really cool touch. And the developers seem very active in supporting this game. You can see this game getting updates very, very recently as just a couple weeks ago. Overall, very excited to actually dive in and see everything this game has to offer. I would tell you, going forward from where I'm at now, the game seems to have a solid base. What I'm curious about with this being a tRPG, which is in this particular case kind of like Fire Emblem in a way, but what I'm curious about to see if this game can sustain itself on is that, again, my understanding is this is a very long game, which makes me curious to see if the combat stays varied and interesting enough to justify that length. Because from the outside looking in, while I'm enjoying it so far, this seems like the kind of game that might have a wealth of content, but you kind of get the point after a little while, and then a lot of the later stuff is just repetitious. So as I move forward through the game, that's kind of the thing I'm going to be keeping my eye on the most. That's where I'm at with it. So far, honestly, pretty enjoyable experience. The game itself is very cheap, actually, so that's always nice. So if the content can be interesting, there's going to be a lot of game here for not a lot of money, which is always a good way to go. That's all I've got for you guys today. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz, but regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.